I want to end October talking about something I am passionate about, cryptids. How can we make these curious creatures into D&D monsters? So the easiest way to make a new D&D monster is to reskin an existing D&D monster, and that's what we're going to be doing today. To start us off, we have a pretty easy one, the Yeti. The Yeti already exists in 5e, although it is a low CR of 3. They have a fear of fire, keen smell, and advantage on stealth checks while in the snow. They can use a claw attack, and they have a spell that inflicts cold damage. They have an 18 in strength and a +3 to stealth checks. If I was using a Yeti as a solo monster, I would probably make it a little bit stronger. There is an abominable Yeti that is a CR9 that might be a little bit better. If you want to use a CR3, you could also have them belong to tribes and fight together for a more difficult fight at higher levels. At lower levels, a CR3 is fine. You could use a Yeti stat block for a Bigfoot as well. I would use the Abominable Yeti to make Bigfoot more formidable. I would keep the AC at 15 and the HP at 137. The speed and climb speed can stay at 40 feet. Strength is a 24 and they have a +5 to perception, which is fine. Keen smell also helps improve that perception. I would try to improve the stealth from a +4 to showcase its famous elusiveness. To show the animal instinct, I would keep the fear of fire. I would change snow camouflage to having advantage on stealth checks in the forest. Chilling gaze can be changed from cold damage. I would say the character is paralyzed by fear and instead takes psychic damage. Cold breath doesn't work here, but maybe you could do a funny thing where the players take acid damage from its putrid breath. Now the next cryptid I have on here is a little lesser known, the Loveland Frog. The Loveland Frog is an Ohio cryptid that is a 4-foot tall humanoid frog. Now I think you could use the grung stat block here. A grung is a poisonous frog. The standard grung is only a CR of 1/4, which I think is fine. The Loveland Frog doesn't need to be super strong. The spellcasting grung is a CR1, and the elite grung is a CR2, so they're all pretty low. Like I said, they have poisonous skin, and they can jump higher and farther than most creatures. They can also make a noise that stuns other creatures, which stun is always great in combat. The Bullywug could also work for the Loveland Frog. They aren't poisonous like their grung cousins. They can communicate with frogs and toads. They also have advantage on stealth checks in swamps, and they have an improved long and high jump like the grung. There are a few different Bullywug stat blocks, including a knight and a royal, but they're all a pretty comparable CR to the grung, so it's mostly whether or not you want your Loveland Frog to be poisonous. The Goatman is a very easy monster to reskin. I think you could just use a Minotaur. I don't like the Great Axe for the Goatman, so I would probably change that to like a kick attack that does bludgeoning damage. You could also use a Satyr stat block, but they are weaker than the CR3 Minotaur, so it depends how strong you want your Goatman to be. The Thunderbird is a spirit bird in native North American culture. It is known to create thunder with the flap of its wings and lightning with the flash of its eyes. For this, I would just use a blue dragon, probably the young version, which is a CR9. You could go stronger depending on how strong you want the monster, and you could go a little bit weaker. The blue dragon can make a claw and bite attack, and it can breathe lightning. It has a 21 strength, and there is a story in native North American folklore about a thunderbird lifting a whale from the ocean. I think dragons are big enough to do that, unlike a lot of other monsters. Now, my favorite cryptid, the Mothman, was a tough one for me. If I was using him in a home game, I would completely make a stat block myself, but I want to stick with the idea of reskinning monsters. The Shadow Demon stat block could be good, although it's only a CR of 4. I would keep the vulnerability to radiant damage and the sensitivity to light. I would maybe change it to him being drawn to light sources. I think that would be pretty sick since he is a moth. But I still don't think he should be fighting in daylight. So I would keep that daylight sensitivity. The damage resistances and immunities are fine. I would get rid of the immunity to grappled and restrained. The dog vision makes sense here. I like the idea of keeping the 120 feet of telepathy so he can talk to player characters. I don't think Mothman should actually speak out loud. I'll remove the incorporeal movement since Mothman is not a shadow. Shadow stealth does make sense to me though. Mothman should be hard to see in the dark. He is black. A claw attack is fine for the actions. I would also add a wing attack as an option for a similar amount of damage as bludgeoning damage. And the option to knock players prone with the wing attack. I would add in keen sight, which gives advantage on perception checks that rely on sight. If I was fully making a stat block, I would give him an ability to force a target or targets to make a wisdom saving throw or be frightened. He is a giant moth. Personally, I would beef this stat block up a little bit. I would increase the HP and some of the stats. I would give him a multi-attack. I would also give him a longer range attack that might be something similar to Psychic Lance or Dissonant Whispers. Now, moving on from Mothman, the Chupacabra is a Latin American cryptid known for attacking livestock, specifically goats. It means goat sucker in Spanish. The creature originated in Puerto Rico as a reptilian creature. Many other Latin American cultures have them as dog-like creatures. Researchers believe they are probably just coyotes with mange, but that doesn't matter much for this video. I just think it's an interesting fact. For this, I would use a null vampire stat block. I didn't know this existed before I started researching for this video, and it overall fits. I'd remove being enraged by celestials and being paralyzed by a stake to the heart. I would also remove having sunlight sensitivity and not requiring air to breathe. Keen smell works well here because it is still an animal. Regeneration could go. I don't know if it really makes sense with the Chupacabra for it to regenerate HP each round. And the bite attack already regains HP anyways. I like that they still drink blood, which the Chupacabra is known for. That's why it's the goat sucker. This is a CR 8 monster, which is fine. That's like a decent CR. The Loch Ness monster, called Nessie by some, lives in Loch Ness in Scotland. They didn't think about the name for very long, I'm going to be honest. It has a long neck and lives in the water. The Plesiosaurus is perfect for this. So this is a D&D stat block already. It's one of the dinosaurs. It even looks like Nessie with a longer neck. It is a predatory marine reptile. It is only a CR of 2, but does Nessie need to be super strong? With a 40-foot swim speed and the ability to hold its breath for an hour, this could be a threat at lower levels. Maybe you have your first level party at a big lake and want a monster to throw at them. You could also level this up by increasing HP, stats, and damage output. I would make Nessie more evasive than the standard Plesiosaurus stat block, since it has been hard for people to photograph Nessie. But I think every cryptid should be kind of evasive because they're supposed to be hard to catch. Now, the Wendigo is a native North American cryptid that is known for its insatiable hunger for human flesh. Sometimes this is a massive, monstrous figure wandering the wilderness, and other times it is a person possessed by an evil spirit. No matter what, they are cannibals. Initially, I thought about using the greater zombie for this stat block. After looking it over, I don't think it fits. It is an undead that just uses a slam attack. There is no cannibalism associated with the greater zombie, which doesn't make sense to me. I think a vampire spawn could work here as a CR5 monster. The damage resistances work. I like the idea of the Wendigo having some regeneration, and keeping spider climb wouldn't affect much. The vampire weaknesses don't make sense here. I wouldn't keep any of them because it just doesn't fit thematically. Like running water and stuff like that just wouldn't make sense to be a weakness for the Wendigo. The actions can stay the same with a claw attack, capable of restraining a target, and a bite attack. For a stronger Wendigo, I would use a Nosferatu stat block, or improve the vampire's spawn stat block. The Nosferatu is immune to the Charmed and Frightened condition. I would add resistance to slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing damage from non-magical weapons. The sunlight sensitivity doesn't make sense to keep. It doesn't matter if the Wendigo requires air. I like the idea of keeping blood discharge because it is a sick ability that allows the Wendigo to vomit a cone of blood. I think that's just really cool. I would remove that the bite attack turns the target into a Nosferatu if they are buried in the ground. A player turning into a Wendigo like that doesn't make as much sense to me. The Jersey Devil is a bipedal kangaroo-like creature. It has the head of a horse or a goat, bat-like wings, a long tail, and cloven hooves. This is an easier monster to reskin another monster to make. You just need to pick any devil that can fly. This includes Cambions, Balors, or Balors, I don't know how to say it, Bone Devils, Horned Devils, Pit Fiends, and the Spined Devils. Those all have wings. You could use any of them for the Jersey Devil. You just need to decide how high of a CR you want, and whether you want the Jersey Devil to use a weapon, because some of these use weapons. Lastly, I wanted to bring up the most important Australian cryptid, the drop bear. The drop bear is a carnivorous bear that drops from trees onto unsuspecting people. People say this is just a hoax to scare tourists and that the common images of drop bears are just red koalas, but I think they're probably real. For a drop bear, I would use a stat block for a giant badger or a black bear. They are both low CR, with a giant badger being 1/4 and a black bear being 1/2. If you wanted, you could use an owlbear for a CR3 drop bear, move it from a large monstrosity to a small or medium, and drop the strength from a 20 to a more reasonable number like 12 to 14. For any monster I pick, I would add a drop ability. I think the drop bear should have advantage on stealth checks while in a tree. You could have the bear do a bit of damage if the target fails a dexterity saving throw. Pretty much fall damage onto the target, so this could be something like 3d6. You could also have the target make a dexterity saving throw or become grappled by the drop bear. This would give the bear advantage on attacks against that grappled creature. So I think the drop bear is just hilarious. I might toss it into a campaign eventually. Maybe in like the Feywild or something. So leave a comment if there are other cryptids that you would like to see in D&D, or if there are other stat blocks you would use for one of these cryptids. If you want me to fully make one of these monsters in D&D, also leave a comment. I could spend some time homebrewing one of these completely to be a fully homebrewed monster with its own stat block instead of borrowing from a different monster. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video though. I hope you had an amazing October. This is actually the last video of October. When this comes out, I should be at the vet with my cat getting him neutered, so that's really fun. And until next time, guys, peace.